Police recently found the charred remains of Jonathan Paul Foster, who went missing on Christmas Eve. Charged with capital murder in the case is Mona Yvette Nelson. At her probable cause hearing on Thursday, a prosecutor reads a statement.
On December 28, 2010, officers found the burned body of the complainant in a ditch. Officers found surveillance cameras in the area, and in reviewing those cameras, observed a gray or silver Ford pickup truck with a chrome toolbox on the bed pull onto the street, stop, and appear to discard a body in the ditch. They identified the individual getting out of the pickup and had a description of that individual from the video. Officers later learned that the defendant was seen that day and was identified by the witness as the person who had been at the residence of the complainant earlier on December 24th. Officers also learned that the defendant had a gray or silver Ford pickup truck with a chrome toolbox in the bed. The defendant was positively identified by the witness who saw her at the residence, was brought in for an interview, and gave consent to search her residence, where officers found physical evidence of burned carpet and twine consistent with the ties used to tie the complainant's hands. They interviewed the defendant, who admitted being the driver of the vehicle who discarded the complainant in the ditch after he was killed.
We begin with the murder of 12-year-old Jonathan Foster.
44-year-old Mona Nelson is charged with capital murder. This is exclusive video we took as police took her into custody yesterday morning.
After that, we saw them pulling evidence out of her home. Evidence, investigators say, proves she killed Jonathan Foster on Christmas Eve. Tonight, we have an exclusive interview with the suspect's ex-father-in-law, and Mona Nelson's ex-husband gave us a statement.
Jeremy Diesel will have that in a moment, and a vigil that's growing outside the young victim's home.
Also, what one neighbor says she saw on the night Jonathan died. We began with the latest on the investigation. 11
News reporter Jeff McShann talked with detectives who say the suspect is a cold-blooded killer who they believe may have other victims. Jeff?
Yeah, that's right, Greg. As you can imagine, over the last 24 hours, actually a day and a half now, detectives have been trying to figure out Mona Yvette Nelson, the main suspect. It's been very difficult, they say, at the very least. But one thing that has stood out in my mind after talking with detectives is that she is a very cold person, they say, a person who has likely committed other crimes against children.
She is a cold, soulless murderer who showed an absolute lack of remorse.
And HPD homicide detective Mike Miller would know. Ever since suspect Mona Yvette Nelson was taken downtown for questioning, Detective Miller has spent hours with her in an interview room, trying to get her to answer questions about the death of 12-year-old Jonathan Foster. She admits dumping the child's body, but denies killing him.
Mona Nelson provided a statement to us implicating others as well as herself. Those others we put under the microscope, and we've interviewed them at length, documented every second of their day. They weren't involved. She acted alone in this crime of her own disregard for human life.
And her motive is still a mystery. We learned today Nelson allegedly killed Jonathan the same day she abducted him, dumped his burned body in this ditch on Christmas Eve. This surveillance camera captured it all and was the big break police needed.
At about 6 p.m., a silver truck pulls up right next to that spot in the ditch, takes a body out of the bed of the truck, and places it in that ditch.
What killed Jonathan is still unknown. He was found in the ditch, badly burned. But arson investigators say accelerants were not used.
Well, obviously, if there's no accelerant, gasoline, kerosene, or such, another method must have been used. As the captain spoke of, there were acetylene torches that were found at the house. We've collected those. We'll be testing those.
Mona Nelson is a welder, a trade she used often, maintaining several apartment complexes. At every turn over the last few days, Detective Miller says the truth, what really happened to this innocent boy, was getting tougher and tougher to swallow.
It's an absolute tragedy that can't be put into words.
And Detective Miller says the investigation is far from over. Obviously, they would like to have a motive. They also want to hear from other potential victims out there, people that may have had run-ins with Mona Nelson over the years. They're going to be looking at missing children in this area, looking at those cases, because they really believe if she could do this to Jonathan Foster, she could have done this to someone else. We're live at the Harris County Jail. Jeff McShann, 11 News.
We have been working to track down those who know Mona Nelson, and tonight, for the first time, we're hearing from her ex-husband and her ex-father-in-law. Reporter Jeremy Diesel has another I-Team exclusive you'll see only on 11 News.
They leave behind memories, small and tall, touched by a vibrant young life gone too soon. Police now say Nelson killed Jonathan Foster on Christmas Eve. That same night, visiting with his family at their home.
Calm, just no worries, no cares, you know, and we're trying to figure out if she was here, where was Jonathan?
Rita Jackson lives next door.
We don't know if she burned him alive. We don't know if she killed him beforehand, you know. I'm just hoping the baby didn't suffer.
People who know Mona Nelson say she has a history of run-ins with police. A string of criminal charges, including injury to a child in North Texas. She lived in Mount Pleasant near Tyler. Nelson herself is a mother and grandmother, now former family wonder if she is also a murderer. In an off-camera interview, her ex-husband Michael Nelson says, quote, "I'm heartbroken for both Jonathan and Mona. All that we can do is lift them up in prayer." Back here, there are plenty of questions, too. Not just why, but who.
How many more are in this area?
Or who else, and where. Now, the family says that Nelson has been in the Houston area for the past several years, but she is well known in her hometown of Mount Pleasant. Nelson has several children, one living there, and 5 grandchildren that live in the Mount Pleasant area. Her criminal record there ranges from assault to passing a bad check. Jeremy Diesel, 11 News.